Peace everyone, Unmask here, and today I'll be teaching you how to draw anime. So this will be a 3-part series, and I will take you from beginning to end on how I create my characters. In part 1, I will be teaching you about proportions and creating a character base. In part 2, we will be working on the head, face, eyes, and hair. And in part 3, we'll be putting clothes on our character. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the tools I'll be supplying for this tutorial is this proportion chart. I will be teaching you how to use this chart so you can design your own characters. It would be best if you follow along so that you can create your own character from beginning to end. So looking at the proportional chart, go ahead and choose a proportion that you like. I am going to be working with the 1 and 7. After you've chosen your proportion that you want to use, the next thing to do is to find a reference photo for a pose. Once you have your reference photo, the first thing that you want to take notes of are the anchor points. Anchor points are the major joints in the figure. So in this case, you have the shoulders, elbows, wrists, hips, knees, and ankles. Those are all the anchor points. Paying attention to how the anchor points are laid out and the pattern that they make helps you translate the proportions easily using the chart. Not only is this technique beneficial to drawing anime, but it's also very beneficial for when you draw realism or even portraits. The next thing to look at is what I call landmarks. These are lines, and the first landmark will be the center line. You'll see that it comes down from her clavicle to her belly button. The next landmark is the directions that the shoulders are pointing. This is a really important landmark to have. The next landmark is the direction of the hips. This is also a very important landmark. The next landmark that I like to make is the chin. I like to make just a vertical line to see what falls beneath the chin. The thing about landmarks is that you can never have too many of them. You can always find a relationship of one body part to another, and that's all landmarks are. This is a very important step to take so that you can easily translate your pose into your character. Okay, now that we have those first basic steps out of the way, let's go ahead and start drawing. Okay, so after you've chosen your proportional size, you want to go ahead and choose a circle that fits comfortably on your paper and draw that many circles. You want to make sure that you leave plenty of room on the top and the bottom for clothing and shoes and hair. Once you have that, go ahead and have the proportional chart alongside your reference photo so that you can look back and forth and translate the proportions. I always start with the head and I just work my way down. And I work my way down using the anchor points. This break here, the top, is obviously the head. And in my reference photo, the head is just slightly turned. The first thing I do is I draw a line giving me the direction of the face. And I just kind of draw an X to give me that position. And I usually cut off the sides of the circle to give me a little bit of the shape of the head. I like to use the chin as an anchor point, so I will put in the chin here. Okay, so the next thing to look at is where the shoulder anchor points fall. If you look at the chart, you'll see that the shoulders fall about this level. However, in my reference photo, you'll see that my anchor point here is actually about level with the chin, and this one is a little bit further down because you have that landmark that is slanted down like this. And you can just kind of draw the neck down wherever you feel like it is. Don't worry too much about it at this point. The next thing to do is find the belly button. I like to use the belly button as a landmark because it shows up in this quadrant here on the proportional chart, and it's about halfway down. That's where the belly button is, and if I look back at my reference photo, I'll see that the center line comes down at this angle, and the belly button actually falls about on this side of the head, so it's about here. So I got the chin, and I triangulate that position like that. That's how I do it. I usually do this in my mind. I don't draw lines. The next thing I look at is where the hips fall. The hips fall right on this line here. However, my hip joint anchor points one is right below the chin, directly below the chin. So I have one and it falls down. If you look at the reference photo, the hips are swinging up like this. And the next anchor point, it's about here. You don't have to be exact on this because the anchor points are just guides. Next anchor points, actually the next landmark that I like to use is the top of the hips. And this is where you get that pinch, where you have the upper torso and then the abdomen and then the hips come out. If you look at the reference guide, you'll find that the hips end the same level of the belly button. And you have this pinch point coming right here. Based on the reference photo, you can use this landmark with the head. Follow the head straight down, you kind of get the pinch point right here. The outside of the hip on this right leg falls underneath the shoulder here. So the outside is here, the pinch is here, so it comes out like this. So now I have this center line, I have the belly button, I have the hips here coming out like this. I have the hip anchor points, the shoulder anchor points. The next thing, I'm going to work down through the legs. You'll see on the chart that the knees fall right here. And this knee is just a little bit lower, and it's to the left. So it's about here. And then I just take a tapered cylinder kind of thing. Now I have my bottom of the pelvis is about halfway through this circle here. And it kind of goes like this. So my leg just kind of tapered down to that circle. I'm not worried too much about shape right now. And my next anchor point, here's my hip joint. And it's not straight down, it's slightly to the left of that as well. So I'm going to just taper my leg. The next anchor points are the ankles, lay about here. And this ankle is all the way out here. And just going to taper that there. The next anchor point that I like to do is the elbows. You see that the elbow is just below the shoulder here. And the next one is kind of tucked in the back here. The next, you can see that the wrist, and it's slightly angled, it's pretty close to the shoulder here. It's about right here. And you kind of get this coming down to the anchor point of the elbow. And on this one, the elbow here, and the wrist is right beside. So you kind of get this arm here, and then you kind of have the hand here, and you have this hand over here. So the last thing here, feet, they kind of go in like this. Let this be the floor. Okay, so don't draw your feet below that. So as you can see, it only took a few minutes to get to this point right here. And once I do a little bit of erasing, the form of this character will really start to pop out. Alright, so now you can really start to see the pose come, and it did not take very long at all. The only thing left to do is to clean up your lines, and that's pretty much it. Clean up your lines a little bit, and rework any of the things that you see that seem off. Okay, so I am happy with the way this figure looks. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is hands and feet. Now, I have a favorite website that I go to for hand references. It is Pose Maniacs. Okay, so when you come over to this website, this is what the home page will look like. And you have the list of poses and angles all here. If you look right here, you have hands for drawing. Unfortunately, most of the website is in Japanese. However, if you click through this list over here, you can often find a hand that will resemble close enough to what you're looking for you to use as reference. So if you click and drag, you can turn the hand any direction that you need for reference. So I could use that hand reference right there for this hand here. So the concept of anchor points and landmarked for the figure and pose is the same concept I use for the hand. You have your obvious landmark, the wrist here, and you have this basic shape, which is kind of like a shovel. And then of course you have the joints of the fingers as your anchor points. However, the landmark that I like to use for the fingers, I find the edge of the fingers on both sides, and then I look at the shape the fingertips make. And the tip of the thumb comes about here. This is another anchor point. This would be the first knuckle of the index finger. And then you can just use the rest of the landmarks, the finger gaps, to kind of fill in the space here. And there you go. So I'm going to use this same concept on this hand. The next thing that I do for feet is I draw the back. I draw just the back where the heel's coming down, just a line. And I form another circle. Not a circle, but an ellipse where the heel is, right? Where I want the heel to be. If it were to touch the ground, that's where I'm putting these ellipses. The next thing is I draw the second ellipse where the ball of the feet will be touching. So here, the foot here touching there, and this foot is touching there. And all you do is you connect those two ellipses. The heel ellipse will be a smaller, it will be a more narrow ellipse than the ball of the foot. So this one's wider, this one's smaller, you can see. And I just connect that. And that is the sole of the foot. After you have the sole of the foot, you just give it some volume and you work your lines right into the rest of the leg. And that is it. Unless you're doing a barefooted person, you don't need to add any more detail than that to the feet. So the last thing that I'm going to do with this is I'm just going to go through, clean up all of my lines, and that'll be it. So here's a final look at the character base that we created. Hopefully yours looks just as good, if not better. And I want to thank you for watching. Hopefully you learned a lot from this tutorial. Please give it a share and a like so that other people can learn from it as well. I look forward to seeing you in parts 2 and part 3. Be sure to check those out to finish your character base. And you can also support my channel on Patreon. It allows me to create these tutorials and offer them for free. Thanks again. Take care. Peace.